Let me tell you, Neo Discovery is a fantastic set. If it wasn't for how stupidly OP Neo Genesis was, Neo Discovery would have been heralded as this amazing new set with all these great Pokemon in it. Because it did have some great Pokemon in it. But when you're a second act to a set that had a card in it that went into literally 100% of decks, alongside a card that was so good that it dominated a format and made a large portion of players quit, yeah, even if every card in your set is above average, you're still going to look like garbage compared to Genesis. And that's not even to mention 2 cards so busted that they got banned from the entire game. I mean, how are you supposed to compete with that? So before we get into the underrated cards of Neo Discovery, let's just go ahead and talk about Umbreon and Espeon, the most accurately rated cards of Neo Discovery. The 2 cards I think are obviously the best in this set, and probably the most used 2 cards to come out of this set. Espeon could punish decks that like to stack a lot of energy for big attacks like Feraligatr, Typhlosion, Magcargo, and Umbreon could snipe for 30 damage, which is godly in a format where you've got so many baby Pokemon sitting on the bench. And they both evolve from Eevee, so they're super easy to use together in the same deck, especially with the addition of Hyper Devolution Spray in Neo Discovery. The worst card is easily Dunsparce. It's only got 30 HP, it's a normal type so it's not hitting anything for weakness, and Glare requires you to flip a coin for a special condition. Dunsparce does not deserve this. They should have given it more HP or not required a coin flip or something, but there's got to be a worse card in every set. Now let's get into these underrated cards. I'm going to be starting with the big one, which is Tyranitar. Stage 2, 100 HP, no weakness, psychic resistance, so Espeon's not going to be hitting it as hard. And yes, Trample does take a lot of energy, but 2 of those are probably going to be special darks, so it's going to boost your attack by 20. Tyranitar is one of my favorite Pokemon, and I love using this card. The 4 turns of setup is definitely worth it, because if your opponent is not used to playing against Tyranitar, they're going to have babies on their bench, and so Trample is giving you potential multi-knockouts the first turn that you use it. And don't even worry about damaging your own Pokemon with Trample, because Discovery also gave us Unknown D. In the 4 turns it takes to set up a Trample attack, you can definitely get an Unknown D on your bench. Man, Unknown D would be like a great name for a Pokemon themed rapper. So this Tyranitar does have its own archetype, but it just never saw very much play because other big archetypes at the time were just more energy efficient and faster, and you didn't really have to flip coins to snipe baby Pokemon, so it's understandable, and that's why it's on the underrated list. Much like Tyranitar, Cobbletops also kinda had its own archetype. I have a Cobbletops Steelix deck already on this channel, which I think is probably the best way to run it, but Cobbletops was a water type attacker that could utilize fighting type energy, so it could be mixed with Steelix very easily, because Steelix can also take advantage of those fighting type energy used for Onix, thanks to the Pokemon power of Neo Revelation Aerodactyl, which shared a common catalyst with Cobbletops in another arguably underrated card of Neo Discovery, Fossil Egg, which essentially made Cobbletops into a Stage 1 Pokemon, making it easier to run, easier to stack energy onto, to deal massive amounts of damage with Hydro Cutter. So in this way you kind of see Neo Discovery as a set I think is underrated because it really took care of itself. It printed a Kabuto and Cobbletops but did not print a Mysterious Fossil, but instead just printed another trainer that made Cobbletops even more useful than Mysterious Fossil would have. And this Cobbletops really just got better with time as there was a resurgence in fire type decks later in the Neo cycle, and this was just a great coverage attacker. Moving on to Kakuna. This is a Stage 1 Pokemon with 70 HP. And it somehow manages to be defensive and a spread attacker at the same time. Secrete Poison, I think, is severely underrated. After you use Secrete Poison, if your opponent damages you next turn, you automatically poison that Pokemon and deal 10 damage to the entire bench. You don't have to flip a coin or anything, it's just done. So what a great deterrent for attacks, because your opponent doesn't want to poison their active Pokemon. It's going to take at least 10 damage between the turn, just shifting from their attack to your draw phase. And then it's also going to deal spread damage to their entire bench. Yeah, no, I don't think your opponent's going to be attacking this Kakuna. And even if they did, I mean, that's just great setup for a Beedrill, which is the next card on this underrated list. So if you're running a Kakuna in a deck that's not specifically a spread deck for Secrete Poison, then you're running it for Speedrill, which was its own archetype, but it is very, very underrated. If you've ever played against a Speedrill deck, you know how infuriating it can be to deal with triple poison. It runs about the same way as a Kingdra deck or a Jumpluff deck, all these other single energy stage 2 attacking decks. Most people just look at triple poison and go like, okay, yeah, you can deal 30 damage between turns to your opponent, but it's going to be easy for them to just retreat out of that or double gust out of that. What they're not realizing is a lot of times that 30 damage in poison damage is going to get around a focus band and knock out a Pokemon that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise without having to flip a coin. And even if you're not knocking out your opponent's active Pokemon with those 3 damage counters of poison that they're going to get between turns, if they need to get out of that poison in order to let that active Pokemon survive, they're going to be wasting their own resources like Double Gust in order to get that Pokemon safely back onto the bench to get rid of that special condition and back into play, because they can't risk it just staying in play and racking up poison damage between turns. So triple poison is also a great disruptive attack because it's going to be forcing your opponent to play their trainer cards like Double Gust and Goldberry earlier than they normally would have, just as preventative measures and not even to supplement their own strategy. Build yourself a Speedrill deck and play it against other Neo format decks, and you will find that they're ready for huge attacks. They are ready for bench manipulation and spread damage, but one thing they are not ready for is special conditions. And that is a niche in Neo that Beedrill is happy to fill. The next underrated card is one that I've mentioned recently on the channel, and that is Discovery Forretress. Because it has Rapid Spin, it gets compared a lot to that Neo Genesis Donphan that also uses Rapid Spin. Donphan is the better Rapid Spinner. The reason that you use Forretress is for spikes. Spikes is stackable. So the entire purpose of a Forretress deck is to get at least 3 Forretress onto the field. That way you can use Rapid Spin, send the active back to the bench, and if your opponent wants to make that Pokemon their active Pokemon again, they're going to take 30 damage in the process. And again, much like the Beedrill I just talked about, that's going to get around Focus Band. That's going to get around the baby effect. This damage is not going to be coming from an attack. It's going to be coming from the Spike's Pokemon power. One of the big stall strategies of Neo formats is I'm going to chuck down a Focus Band onto a baby Pokemon, make it the active. That way my opponent's going to have to flip 2 coins if they want to knock it out. Well, if you've got 3 Forretress on your side of the field and your opponent wants to take a baby Pokemon from the bench to the active position, they can't without knocking it out. And you don't have to imagine very far to see all the shenanigans you can get into with Double Gust, or potential partner Pokemon that can damage your opponent's Pokemon without actually attacking them, that can move damage counters around, or that can deal really good spread damage to pair with Rapid Spin. You have the option to make all of your Forretress fairly tanky by putting at least 1 special metal on them. It's just, I don't really understand what made this card be relegated to rogue decks. I don't know what really kept it from being a major archetype. It had so much potential. I just feel like this is a card that was not explored enough. So I'll probably be trying to play test as many versions of Forretress in the future as I can. You will definitely know on this channel when I do. The next underrated card is Poliwhirl, and this is another card that I just don't understand why there aren't more people singing its praises. For 1 energy, you can use Belly Drum, which lets you take 2 basic energy out of your deck, stick directly onto Poliwhirl, which is going to fully power up this card. And you do have to put 3 damage counters on Poliwhirl, but guess what? You've got Berry and Focus Band to help with that. If Poliwhirl already has a damage counter on it, that's perfect for just slapping down a Goldberry and completely healing off all 4 damage counters and just getting those 2 energy for free. With this Poliwhirl, you are able to attach 3 energy in 1 turn, and yeah, you're not going to be able to deal that much damage by fully loading this Poliwhirl. You're going to be dealing 30 or 40 with Water Gun, but you know that that is not why this card's so good. It's because you're going to evolve Poliwhirl the very next turn. Neo Discovery has a pretty decent Poliwrath, but the most underrated card, in my opinion, in this set is Politoed. Double Slap costs 4 energy, but that doesn't matter because Poliwhirl has such good energy acceleration. Part of the reason this is so underrated is because Poliwhirl is also underused and underrated. I've played around with Frog Song decks and they are so much fun to play. You're always going to be set up on turn 3, and by turn 3 not only will you be completely set up for Politoad's Double Slap attack, you're also going to have a bunch of tadpoles on the bench, which is where Frog Song comes into play. If you have 4 Politoads, Poliwraths, Poliwhirls, or Poliwags in play, Politoad is going to deal 40 more damage with its Double Slap attack, regardless of how many heads you get. So you can actually flip 2 tails and still deal 40 damage with Double Slap. On average, you're going to be dealing 80 damage with Double Slap, and you can deal up to 120. Yes, there are other archetypes that could deal heavy damage for the same amount of setup, but this video is not about which cards from Neo Discovery are best. It's about which ones are underrated, and when's the last time you heard anyone talk about Discovery Politoad? Like I said, it's a super fun rogue deck to run, especially if you're a fan of the Politoad line. I myself, I love Poliwhirl. But I guess the overall theme of this video is that Neo Discovery is just in such a long shadow cast by Neo Genesis that most of the cards are overlooked. I mean, out of the 7 cards I've talked about, 5 of them are holo rares. That is so strange for a set to be released, and the rarest, most powerful cards in the set are just completely overlooked because of the set that came before. But that's why I do this underrated video series, is to look a little deeper into each set, maybe try to find some hidden gems that people don't really know as much about, that haven't seen as much attention on the competitive side of things or even in the collector side of things, and just show some appreciation to those cards. Each card has had work put into it, has been considered for balancing issues, for art and text, and so showing appreciation to those cards is always nice. So let me know down in the comments if there are any Neo Discovery cards that you think are underrated, be it competitively, or if you just love the artwork regardless of the card's effects. Let me know in those comments. Stay tuned to the channel for more vintage Pokemon TCG content. Links to all my socials are in the description, and until next video, bye.